So at this first phone screen stage, are there any kind of surprising mistakes you see people make?
Yes, Ida. I'm so surprised by how many candidates go into those conversations without energy. You don't have to be an extrovert. You don't have to be the life of the party, but show me you want the job. You know what I'm saying? Like have a little bit of enthusiasm for the opportunity that we're discussing. Yeah, I see a lot of candidates who on paper fit the requirements, but they just don't have any energy or excitement about the opportunity.
Julia, welcome. I'm so thrilled to have you. Would you like to start by introducing yourself?
Yes. Hello, everyone. I'm Julia Arpag, CEO and co-founder of Aligned Recruitment. Very happy to be here.
So one of the big questions that I would like to start with is, what's the state of the job market? We've obviously gone from a very hot market during COVID to a very weird market right now.
Yeah, no, that's such a good question. And I get that question all the time, actually. And it's funny because right now there's actually still more jobs available than there are people looking. I know that sounds crazy, but that has been the case in tech for the last several years. It feels tighter because a lot of really big name companies are doing layoffs. That is a fact, absolutely. However, our company, for example, we work with small to mid-sized businesses, anywhere from 2 to 200 employees typically. And we've seen a ton of opportunity because those small companies are still hiring. There is a lot of opportunity. You just have to know where to look. And the job market really has started relying on word of mouth, referrals, networking. I've always recommended that job seekers not just chuck out 1,000 resumes to 1,000 different jobs, but especially now that it feels so oversaturated with prospective candidates, this is the time to really hone in on those one-to-one relationships and connections. And that's what's going to really make you stand out in this job market.
So what I'm hearing is that those layoffs that we hear about from big tech companies, and they're of course very salient, that they're not fully representative of the reality of what's actually going on.
Yes, right now, more than typical, or more than usual, I should say, companies are doing layoffs 100%. We've seen a huge shift from, to your point, COVID. We had a crazy shrink, like so many companies did mass layoffs. Then 2021 into 2022, we had this massive boom where suddenly the job market was very much a candidate's market. And then right now it is definitely shrinking a little bit more, not to COVID levels, but still. That being said, though, like I said, there are tons of opportunities still, and there are tons of companies hiring, and the whole layoff story is not the whole story. So yes, exactly what you just said, that the headlines we're seeing are not everything behind the scenes.
And so thinking about tech, which is your area of expertise, are there any types of roles where you still see more demand? And are there some areas where maybe it actually is quite difficult to get a job?
Good question. I always see a lot of opportunity for software engineers and for salespeople. So we talk to a lot of companies, sales especially, because there can be a stigma kind of in the tech sales space, which is partially fair, to be honest, that there's a really quick turnover. Like salespeople can struggle to stay in jobs for more than 1 to 2 years. Whereas it really takes at least a year to learn the product, learn the company, learn the industry. So within tech, I do see a lot of opportunity. Companies are pretty much always hiring good salespeople, and they're always hiring really good coders. Like if you can come on board and help them build their product, they're going to want to talk to you.
So I want to ask a bit more about both of those because I find it really interesting. And beginning with the salespeople, I am actually not at all an expert in that area. So what's a profile that is a good profile for a tech sales position, and maybe at different levels of seniority?
Yeah, good question. So for the mid-level sales consultant, someone who's been in this world for anywhere from 3 to 10 years, people are going to want to see that you have stuck with a brand for at least 3 years and at least one of your jobs. I get it. I'm a millennial myself. I know that we can be a little bit job hoppier than some other generations potentially. I actually don't think that's a bad thing. I think it just shows that we're pursuing opportunities in whatever ways we can. However, I think it becomes an issue when you haven't ever stayed anywhere long enough to demonstrate your ability to weather storms, to weather highs and lows. So employers do look for at least one of your roles to have had that longer trajectory so that they can see, okay, they've weathered difficulties, they've learned how to sell a product, they've stuck with it when it was tough, they've had quota, they've performed against quota at 100% or higher, ideally. Those are the things that companies look for. And then depending on how consultative their sales process is, they're going to want to know, have you been able to run sales processes that can take 3 to 6 months? Like, it can be hard to sell these 6 and 7 figure software tools. So they want to know, can you have that longer conversation? Can you keep the buyer engaged for that long? Those are the things that our clients are usually looking for.
Do you have any advice for candidates who maybe don't have this longer experience at one company, but there's a perfectly good reason for it? So, for example, someone could have been laid off 3 times and in like one of those big layoffs, right? So it's not only that person that got fired.
Yes, and I do talk to candidates like that, absolutely. And what I would say is, number one, it's always helpful if you put those reasons for leaving your roles on your resume and on your LinkedIn, because then I know, oh, they didn't just want to leave their jobs every 6 months, they had to. So that's helpful for the recruiter or the hiring manager to be able to see those reasons in print. So if you're comfortable putting those reasons like publicly on your LinkedIn and on your resume, that's really helpful. And then if you can point to other successes, like, okay, you can't point to 3 years in a row where you hit quota every year, but tell me what other successes you were able to drive. Like, how much did you close in new business in the 6 months that you were there? What percentage to quota did you attain in the 8 months that you were there? Things like that. Find other ways to kind of brag about your positive contributions, even if your tenure wasn't as long.
Right. And if someone is a student and thinks that this sounds like a super interesting career, what are the backgrounds that people have when they get into tech sales? And what makes someone successful?
Well, a lot of companies will hire you right out of college, like not in this kind of mid-level sales role that I'm describing, but as an SDR or a BDR, where you're doing a lot of cold calling, you're doing a lot of those, initial outreaches, cold emailing, cold LinkedIn messages. That's kind of where you get your training ground of, do I actually enjoy sales? Do I like having these conversations? And then from there, you can typically pivot into full cycle sales. So as far as what you could be doing right now in college to determine, is that something I would enjoy? Take as many business and marketing and communications classes as you can, because really it comes down to, are you a talented communicator? Can you listen really well? Can you understand the needs of the person that you're talking to? Can you articulate how whatever you're selling fits those needs? Those are the big skill sets that you can be honing right now, even before you have a job. So that would be my highest recommendation.
Do you ever see employers waiving the college requirement? Because it sounds to me like this is something that, well, you don't need college to be good at this.
True.
And so is the college degree something that is a hard prerequisite, or are there areas where employers are more open to, I guess, more varied backgrounds?
Yeah, that's a great question. No, college is absolutely not a requirement for a lot of the companies that I work with. There are some companies that they do die on the college hill, which is obviously their prerogative. That's their choice. But no, that's actually why I love working in tech, because there is so much opportunity and you don't need to have a traditional background. Like, you really can come from, if you have the skill sets, and if it's a more senior level position, you do have to have some experience. But there's a lot of companies that just say, hey, can you do the job? Have you done the job? Yes, great, done. And they don't necessarily need to see that you've gone to a certain college or even gone to college at all. Something that's amazing is there's a lot of boot camps out there these days for, obviously, we've all heard of the ones for software engineering, but there's also boot camps for software sales. So I know a lot of people that run 1 to 3 month programs where they teach people how to do tech sales. And they have a really strong track record of being able to place those people into entry level tech sales roles, even if you haven't gone to college or don't have exposure to the industry previously. I'm not saying those boot camps are necessary for you to break into that world, but there's lots of ways that you can pivot into that world without a college degree.
Are there any specific, I guess, organizations that run boot camps that you would recommend or that we could link to after?
Not off the top of my head, but let me shoot you a couple links after this recording. I'd love for you to feature those. Yeah.
That sounds great. And so the other area you mentioned that there's still a lot of demand for are software engineers. And I wanted to know, with all of the AI tools coming out, do you see that increasingly that there is a requirement for software engineers to somehow work with AI? Is that something employers want to see?
Yes, but software engineers have always worked with AI. Like whatever automation tools have been available, software engineers have worked with them. So I know AI can seem really scary, but it's actually not new. We're just getting better and better at automation, and there's more and more that we are able to automate. What's cool though, so for my friends and candidates who I've placed in software engineering roles, what they're actually loving about the increase of AI tools is that it frees them up to do more creative work as a developer. So the things that the robots can't do, you as a software engineer have more exposure to getting to do those things. And one thing I'll say, every software engineer is getting better and better at QA, because a robot is never going to write code, in my humble opinion. I'm sure people disagree with me on this, but they're never going to write code as well as a human being. And a robot's going to make mistakes that a human doesn't. So having that QA skill set where you can look back over lines of code and know, oh, we should tweak this, or actually, this doesn't really accomplish what we need it to. Let's rewrite it this way. That's a skill set that's always going to exist.
Yeah, I agree. And I can relate to that experience. I use AI to write code. However, it sometimes writes really stupid code. And if I didn't know how to QA it, it would be terribly wrong.
Yeah, you get it. You totally get it.
And so, in terms of thinking about the whole funnel job seekers have to go through, right? We start with having your profile out there and having a resume, which is the first contact point with a recruiter. And then we, of course, have a phone conversation and so on. What are the do's and don'ts at every stage of that funnel?
Oh my gosh, that's such a good question. So I actually want to back up the funnel to the before you need a job. Okay. So if you're happy where you are, or if you're not in the job market for whatever reason, don't ever stop networking. Because to your point from earlier, there are layoffs. I know so many people, myself included, who have been fired like out of the blue and without preparation. Your career is up to you. Like no one's going to look out for you like you are. So even if you're happy where you are right now, I would say your job search, quote unquote, needs to never stop. So I would always network. I would always jump on, even if it's like a 15-minute coffee chat with someone who's a leader in your industry. Like make a point of every week, block your calendar, send out LinkedIn connection requests, send messages to people who are where you want to be in your career, make connections with industry leaders as much as possible, just get exposure so that when you do need to find a new job, whether you're unhappy where you are, you're laid off, you're fired, your company goes under, whatever the case may be, you already have all these feelers out there. So that's number one. So do's, network. Don'ts, don't not network. That would be what I would say for that stage. And then when you are actively looking, I would say that one-to-one connection is so important. So I know some people that have gotten jobs from just applying. It can happen. I'm not going to say it can't happen, but there's also people that have sent thousands of applications and heard back from zero. So I would say do a mix. Go ahead and apply. Like, yeah, if you want to just click the easy apply button on LinkedIn, all right, sure. Like, why not? But I would definitely also have the strategy of specifically reaching out to not necessarily hiring managers because they're inundated with messages on LinkedIn, but see if you can somehow get a foot in the door at the companies that you're applying to. So look at your LinkedIn connections, think through your community. Are there people you're connected to who have connections at this company? Because a referral is the literal best way to get an interview. So messaging recruiters and messaging hiring managers, again, you can try it. You're not going to get many responses. So my number one recommendation at that point of the funnel, the job application phase, is to go ahead and get a referral if you possibly can. Find someone who knows someone who knows someone who knows someone at the company that you're applying to.
Yeah. And what people have to remember is that often there are referral bonuses. So if you're qualified, people will want to refer you. But of course, it's an art in how you present yourself, how you reach out to people. And also you have to make sure you apply for jobs where you're a good candidate.
Exactly. Right. Like I agree with the advice that you should apply if you fit like 50 to 70% of the requirements. But just know, number one, a lot of other candidates who are applying fit 90 to 100%. So that's who you're up against. And then number two, if you hit less than 50%, yeah, your odds are very, very low. So yes, it saves everyone a lot of time if you really try to focus on the roles for which you genuinely would be one of the best fits possible.
And also, I think it's about reading the requirements carefully and understanding which ones are a must and which ones aren't. So, for example, I hire a lot of PhD scientists, and then we will say a PhD is required. And I'll sometimes have people reach out to me who are, say, undergrad or master's students, in which case it shows they really didn't read the job description, right? Maybe they don't need to have all the coding skills, but they do need a PhD for a specific position.
Yep, that's a great call out. And a lot of job descriptions are very well written, and that they explicitly say these are must haves, these are nice to have. So you'll typically know that from the JD. But yes, please, please, please pay attention to that so that you can interview well when you do get to that stage of the process.
So once we get to the actual phone interaction, I'm assuming you're the first contact point in most cases.
Exactly. Yep. Yep. So my recruitment firm, what we supply for our clients is we go out and we find the right applicant or the right candidates. We send them messages on LinkedIn. We review incoming applicants. We get the right people at that top of the funnel. Then we have a phone interview where we're assessing, do you fit the must-haves of this role? Do you fit what we're looking for in terms of the culture of this company? I don't like the term culture fit. I prefer the term culture add because we don't want to hire a bunch of identical people, but we do want to hire people who are aligned with the mission and the vision and the values of the companies that we're recruiting for. So that's what we're evaluating during that initial phone call. And then also, soft skills are always so important. Being a good communicator, being able to articulate your experience and how it fits with the role, being able to articulate what you understand and like about the company that you're applying for. No matter what titles you're going for, those soft skills are always going to help you get onto the next interview stage of the process. So that's what my team and I do. And then from there, the candidate to impress us during the interview stage. Some of our clients do assessments. Some of them want us to send them directly and they can look at their profile, their resume, the notes from our call. And then that's how you get in front of the client themselves.
So at this first phone screen stage, are there any kind of surprising mistakes you see people make?
Yes, Ida. I'm so surprised by how many candidates go into those conversations without energy. You don't have to be an extrovert. You don't have to be the life of the party, but show me you want the job. You know what I'm saying? Like have a little bit of enthusiasm for the opportunity that we're discussing. Yeah, I see a lot of candidates who on paper fit the requirements, but they just don't have any energy or excitement about the opportunity. And since we're working with these small to mid-sized businesses, every hire impacts their culture so intensely. So if you're not excited about working at this company, they're not going to be excited about working with you. So the number one surprise I have is that lack of enthusiasm. And the number one advice I would give when you get to the interview stage is do your research, understand the company, and come with that information and with that excitement about the opportunity that you're interviewing for.
Do you see any, I guess, consistent differences that are generational where maybe younger people or older people or a certain generation would show this lack of enthusiasm more?
That's an interesting question. Honestly, no. We have some entry level roles with our clients where we're interviewing people that are in their 20s. And then we have some executive level roles where we're interviewing people in their 50s and 60s. And no, I would say it's really across the board. I see candidates who are excited and I see candidates who aren't. So, no, I actually wouldn't say it's generational quality.
That's super interesting. And do you think the ones who are less excited are just not interested in the role and they just want to talk to kind of talk? Or do you think they actually are interested, but
I've ever worked for the company that I run now, we manually, individually read every single resume. Like a human being is looking at every single resume. So no, we don't need you to have specific keywords. Does it make our job easier if you explicitly spell out how your background matches the role? Yes. But the ATS is not this like genius robot computer that's perfectly able to evaluate based on your resume whether you're a fit for the role. So I just want to dispel that myth right now. And then the other piece of it, I'm sorry, remind me of your other question.
The LinkedIn profile.
Oh, yes. I personally prefer for both of them to match, like for your resume and your LinkedIn to be as similar as possible. You can be creative with formatting on your resume if you want to, but for me, it's easier. And most of my clients think it's actually kind of shady if they're super different because they're like, why are you presenting one thing like publicly on your LinkedIn and then another thing privately on your resume? So I would recommend both the information on both match as much as possible.
I've actually seen cases of people sort of, I guess, improving their titles relative to what they actually wear at a company.
That's a nice way to put it. Improving their titles instead of saying that they're lying. Yeah, I mean, please don't lie on your resume and your LinkedIn. I mean, I get it. Like if you're going for a more senior level position than you've had previously, I'm all for like in the bullet points beneath your position, highlighting those leadership responsibilities you had, even if you didn't have a leadership title. So yes, do everything you can to sell yourself, highlight the things you've done that are related to the kind of job you want. But I would not recommend that you inflate your titles and say they were things that they weren't. You can though, like on my resume, back when I was applying for jobs, before starting my own company, I would put, recruitment leader, like maybe before I was actually leading people, because those are the roles I was going for. So that's what I would put at the top of my resume. But then I would be honest about the titles I'd actually held at roles that I had previously in my career.
Yeah. And I guess one more resume question, and I get this one a lot from my students, whether they should put hobbies on their resume or not.
I don't think it matters, to be honest. Like I've never not interviewed a candidate because they did or didn't have hobbies on their resume, to be fully transparent. What I think can be cool about hobbies is it can give the recruiter and the hiring team something to like talk to you about. Like let's say you put that you love, rescuing dogs or that you play pickleball on the weekends. Like it can be a kind of a point of conversation and that helps us get to know you better as an individual. But I wouldn't say it's going to make or break your candidacy either way.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So at what stage of the conversation should one start to talk about salary?
Oh, immediately. And I think good recruiters, will ask you what your target salary is because some companies don't want us as recruiters to be transparent about what the range is that we can offer. Whenever possible, I do encourage my clients to be upfront about that. And I actually, whenever my clients are on board, I post the salary because I don't want to waste anyone's time. Some companies aren't comfortable with that, which I get. But in my case, as much as possible, I volunteer that salary range to the candidate so that we don't waste time. And if it's a good fit, great. If it's not, great. But if your recruiter doesn't bring it up, I would recommend you bring it up as the candidate in that very first conversation so you don't waste your time or their time.
That's great. What about other kind of job perks or aspects? For example, remote versus hybrid is, of course, an important topic today. So, what do you see in the market in terms of the types of jobs that get posted and also what candidates want?
There's a mix actually. So for me personally, I am passionate about remote work. My company, Aligned Recruitment, is fully remote. My co-founder's in New York. I'm here in Atlanta. We have teammates in New Jersey, Florida, New York, South Carolina. Like we are extremely passionate about remote work. So I only talk to candidates for my internal company who want that. However, we recruit for clients who are fully in person. Like I have clients here in Atlanta who only work with people who can be on site here in Atlanta. And I'm just upfront about that. So candidates always know, hey, if I'm going to be considered for this role, that means going into an office every day. And if they opt out of it, I'm like, great, no problem. Like the last thing I want is to have someone drive into an office every day who doesn't want to do that. So I talk to a mix, right? I talk to candidates who are only willing to do remote work, which is great. And then I only talk to them about my companies that are recruiting remotely. And then I have others that are open to hybrid or fully in person. And those are the ones that I talk to you about those roles. I will say I talk to more candidates who want remote than those who want in office. But I also talk to more companies who are open to remote than those who are only willing to do in office. So I think it's just a matter of, go ahead.
I was going to ask, have you ever found that you have a company that wants fully in office and then it turns out it's a challenge to find candidates?
I've definitely been in that boat before. I'll be honest, being in such a big city, I'm really not running into that right now with the couple of roles I'm recruiting for in Atlanta that do need to be in person. I've had a couple a couple clients in the past. One comes to mind in particular that could only recruit in New York City, but their salary was very, very low. So that's the issue. If you're in a very expensive city like New York City, but you can't meet candidates where they need to be compensation wise, and you have no flexibility in terms of remote, I would say you need to be willing to pull one of those levers. You need to either be open to hybrid or remote, or open to negotiation on salary, or open to some other kind of perk that will allow you to attract more talent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that makes sense. So, who are the types of companies you work with? And you already mentioned size, and I would love to know a little bit more about them and what kind of challenges smaller companies see when hiring.
Yeah, that's a good question. So, yes, we work with tech companies. So, companies who are in the tech industry who have anywhere from 2 to 200 employees. And what I would say their biggest challenges tend to be they've never had a recruitment function internally. So, they're specialists in tech. Like some of our clients are custom software development agencies, or they build project management software. Like their focus is not recruitment. So they just don't know how to do it, as they shouldn't. Like that's not their skill set. So their big challenge is how to get the right people on board when their company is so small and potentially vulnerable to the high cost of a bad hire. They need to make sure that they're rolling out their hiring process in a way that really serves them and serves their goals. So that's where we come in, because this is our expertise. This is what we know how to do. So we can come in and build out that function at our clients. That's what we do for them.
Do they ever have the problem that maybe they're technical founders in one area and then they need a technical expert in an adjacent area, but they don't quite know who exactly they need? Like, do they need a PhD level scientist or an undergrad or maybe something in between? Like, how does that work?
That's a good question. Yes, actually, that is happening right now. One of our clients is actually specifically looking for a master's level, someone who's been really strong in an area of expertise that they don't personally have. So yes, in that case, we do a lot of market research. We work closely with those clients to understand what they need, like what gaps they need filled. And then we go do the research to figure out what are the titles and types of experience that would help fill those gaps. So yes, we do see that a lot.
Is it ever a good idea, or do companies ever do something where they think they need role filled, but they're not sure enough to commit to it full time and they would hire a consultant or kind of an advisor who would help them figure out what it is they need to commit to long term in terms of that role?
That's a good question. Yeah, so that's part of what we offer as far as talent consulting. It's not just hand us a role, we'll go recruit it. It's okay, let's map out your whole talent strategy for, Q2 2024 or all of 2024. We've had clients come to us and say, "Hey, I think we need to hire for this role." And then we've worked with them to kind of tweak it or fully pivot if needed and say, "Actually, your organization looks like it more needs this kind of role." So a good recruitment company can actually be more of a talent consultant, not just someone that you hand a job description to and then they go recruit for it.
So I would like to ask you about your entrepreneurial journey and maybe even back up a little bit how you got into recruiting. I don't know much about how you get into recruiting, but it sounds like a fascinating field. So I would love to learn about that and then what led you to start your own business.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for asking. So I got into recruiting because I was an English major in college, had absolutely no career direction, literally none. I just knew that I liked to read, I liked to write, I liked to communicate. I was a natural extrovert, had no idea what career fit those things. So I graduated from college and took a couple odd jobs for the first year. And then I found out about a program called AmeriCorps back in my hometown of Rochester, New York, where I could work with first generation college students, help them get ready for college, help them prepare for the whole process. And I loved college. I was like, oh my gosh, this sounds amazing. So I did that for a year, realized I loved recruiting students to that program. So then I pivoted into a role with an area college where I got to recruit students to go to that college. Loved it. And then my husband and I moved down here to Atlanta. And after about a year of transition, I got to move back into recruitment, but this time on the corporate side, where I was recruiting mid to senior level professionals into roles at the company that I was working for at the time. And so I've gotten to just kind of focus on corporate recruitment ever since then. And I've loved it. I've loved it. So to answer your question about how one gets into recruitment, it's typically a little stumbly because it's really not something you necessarily major in college. But if you're a good communicator, if you love people, if you love providing value for clients and for candidates, it's a really satisfying field because you literally get to change people's lives. So that's how I ended up here. And then as far as your question about my entrepreneurial journey, that was kind of a crazy turn of events back in July of 2023. My second son was born, and 5 weeks later, I was laid off from my current position, or my position at the time. And I was very, very fortunate in that I got 6 job offers within 2 weeks of that happening. So it gave me a moment to say, wow, there's opportunity here. What direction should I move in? So I actually initially took 2 of those job offers. One of them was to co-found Aligned with my co-founder, Alana. And the other was an internal role at one of the clients that I had previously worked for. And Aligned honestly just took off so fast that I went back to the company that had offered me the full-time role. And I said, guys, I love you. I would love to work with you, but this is booming. Like, this business is really, really growing. And I want to give all my energy here and see what we can do with it, which ended up working out because that company became one of our clients. So we've really gotten to collaborate still. And it's been a total blast.
And so did you know your co-founder before?
Yes, we go way back actually. So I went to, let me think. I met her when she was in middle school, which is hilarious. My younger brother and her were really good friends. So I knew her that way. We stayed in touch. We both became recruiters. So we actually worked together at one of our previous staffing companies years and years ago. We've stayed in touch. She's actually a serial entrepreneur. This is the second business that she started. So I've gotten to follow her journey and just see her success in this space. So when she offered to co-own the business, I was like, well, you have proven experience in being amazing at this. So yeah, you sound like a great co-founder.
That sounds like a great opportunity to start your entrepreneurial journey, to actually be able to do it with someone who has done it once before.
Yes, yes. She is such a gift. I love getting to work alongside her. If anyone is thinking about going into business, do it on your own if you want to. But again, if you're an extrovert like me, it has been so fun to get to build something alongside someone else.
Well, and also someone that you knew well, right? Because I think starting a business with someone you don't know well enough can be very risky too. Like, what if it turns out there's
It's like a marriage. Like, it's such a commitment. Like, you're day in, day out. Like, we joke all the time that we talk to each other more than we talk to our husband. So yeah, you really do need to know that you work well with this person. You share the same vision and values. Absolutely. That's all definitely pivotal.
So what are the things you've learned about entrepreneurship that you didn't know before?
I don't know. It's funny. I never had really given much thought to entrepreneurship. I never thought I would open up my own business. It was not one of my goals. I had like sort of considered it, like looked into a couple courses of like how to start a recruitment business, but it just felt really overwhelming. I'll be totally honest. So the biggest thing I guess I've learned is you can do it. I can do it. We can all do it. Like, you just take one step at a time. You know, there's so much you don't know, but you slowly figure it out, and you don't need to solve all your problems on day one. You can kind of build the plane as you're flying it, and you don't need to feel like you have to have everything figured out from the very beginning. So that's what I'd say I've learned so far.
That really resonates. And I think there's this big step when you go from having an idea to actually doing the first thing, whatever it is, right? Whether it's the first podcast you record or the first client outreach you try. And I always wonder what it is that pushes people from the research phase, which is very comforting, right? You can sit and read infinite amounts of content about how to do it, to actually doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for me, I was kicked out of the nest, as you know, like I got laid off and I was like, well, I got to do something. And then it really was like the fact that I had such like a soft landing. It was so nice to know I had that other job offer I could have taken. But then I also got to kind of stretch my wings and see how I liked entrepreneurship. So I had a very unique blessing, to be honest, where I really kind of got to test it and see if I liked it. And then when I realized I did, I was able to go all in. So that's really what kind of moved the needle for me.
Well, and it sounds like an amazing success story, the way it took off in July 2023, which many people would think about as a hard job market, right?
It was an intense job market. It was really intense. Yeah. A lot of recruiters were posting on LinkedIn about being out of work for 6, 12, 18 months, submitting hundreds of job applications and hearing nothing back. So I was very, very fortunate. All the jobs I was offered, I hadn't applied to any of them. They were all just people that I knew, people I'd worked with, clients I'd had in the past. So I was very, very fortunate that, like, that's why I say, like, never stop networking. The connections you have are going to be how you land your next gig.
So what is it that you think makes Align unique, and because you guys are such a successful, from what I understand, like how do you find your clients, and what are the things that you can uniquely offer your clients?
I think what's made Aligned Recruitment so successful so far is we have a proven track record. So even though we just started our business, a lot of our early clients were companies that I had worked with before in previous roles. So they've experienced me as a recruiter. They've experienced my team as recruiters. They know the level of excellence that we hold ourselves to. So they felt really good about committing to work with us because they knew the standards that we set are very, very high. So that's how we got our first clients, was people that we've worked with in the past and who know us. And then how we've got clients from there is those success stories, that track record. We've just been very open about it on LinkedIn. I've shared a lot about the success we've had at our company. And so I've had other companies be more open to working with us because they've seen, oh, they know what they're talking about. Like they're actually able to drive revenue and profitability for their clients by helping them make these pivotal hires. So that's been a big strategy for us as well.
Right. And so I know you're pretty active on LinkedIn. And so it sounds like being active on LinkedIn regularly is an important part of business development.
I would say it's very helpful. I mean, it just kind of pulls back the curtain and lets your prospective client see you. Like, this is what you do. This is what you're capable of. This is what your business does. And they can also get a sense of your tone, like kind of how you talk and who you are. And so they can decide, is this someone
entrepreneur comment on this fact that you want to be somewhat personal on LinkedIn, right? Like, of course, it's not Instagram, so you don't want to keep posting pictures of your private life, but that there is something to be said about authenticity, right? Because in the end, that's how you're going to differentiate yourself. And maybe some people have the fear of like, if I reveal too much of who I am, then I'm going to alienate some people. But it's also a matching process, right? Like, not everyone is going to like everyone. And if you show a little bit of who you are, then you can find people who really like that.
Oh, I totally agree. And actually, I do post some personal things. Like I've posted pictures of my family. I've been very open about, like I mentioned, I was 5 weeks postpartum when I got laid off. Like I'm a whole person, just like everyone that I talk to on LinkedIn is a whole person. They're a parent or a spouse or, early in their career, they have imposter syndrome. Like everyone's a whole person. So I actually think being authentic is a way better way. I don't think it alienates people. I think it draws people in. And I think it shows people, this is my brand. This is what I'm about. If this resonates with you, great. Like I'm not holding anything back. I'm not lying. I'm not pretending. I think it's an amazing way to build, like kind of to validate who you are and to validate what you do.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. That's why I like podcasts, because that's how you get to know people more when you talk to them.
Yep.
Is there anything else you'd like to add about this broad area of topics?
Yeah. No, I mean, my biggest advice to any job seekers is, like I said, before you're a job seeker, put yourself out there. And then my biggest advice to any employers is outsource. Like if it's not your specialty, don't do it yourself. Don't waste your time. Delegate it, hire a professional tech recruitment team, let them do it for you, and then you can focus on your zone of genius.
Yeah. Well, this was great, Julia. Such a pleasure to have you. Thank you.
Thank you. It was such a pleasure for me as well. Thank you so much.